Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have the official playoff field. There was a ton of drama surrounding the final spot, the 10 seed. Of course, with Duke winning yesterday, the ACC champion, not going to be making it. Virginia knocked out. That allows two group of five teams to make it into the playoff, and I'm sure there will be some serious debate about another change to the way the auto bids work because you have Tulane, who's going to be a significant underdog on the road. This game already happened earlier this year where Tulane went to Ole Miss and got crushed. They're going on the road at Ole Miss again. You have James Madison possibly sitting 23.5 point underdogs I saw on the road in Eugene at Oregon. So that's two group of five teams that are going to be more than two touchdown underdogs on the road in round one. People are going to say, that's ridiculous, this format. And you know what? Part of it is just the craziness of the ACC. The ACC does end up getting a team in, but it's an at-large spot. And so it's Miami as the number 10 seed. Notre Dame completely screwed out of a playoff spot. I for sure thought Notre Dame, based off of their analytical rankings, was going to be in. You can kind of argue because the lack of huge win for Notre Dame, they just don't have one. Maybe, and also Miami, they're number 7 in terms of FPI as well. They're very good. So Miami obviously did beat Notre Dame head to head, but that was a week 1 game. How much onus should be put onto that game? People speculating, well, because it got to the point to where Miami and Notre Dame were back to back in rankings, that allowed them to take into account the head to head. So that's why they moved Miami in front of Notre Dame. But let's just go through this. So you have Indiana, the number 1 overall team. Indiana beat Ohio State yesterday. They were 4.5 point underdogs. I thought Ohio State was going to win the game. Indiana wins. It's a very nice win for their program. They have either Oklahoma or Alabama. It's the 8v9 game. I'm guessing, that game's probably going to be a pick'em. Alabama, there were question marks surrounding them even making the playoff. I do think the committee said in that spot, it's an extra game. Right, it's a conference championship game. You're not going to penalize Alabama for making the SEC championship. That doesn't make a ton of sense. They're trying to elevate the value and the attractiveness of competing in a conference championship. So why would they screw Alabama out of a spot for playing that extra game in a conference championship? Alabama just has too good of an overall resume, along with the fact that one of their 3 losses came in the extra conference championship game. Otherwise, they would be 10-2, the same record as some of these other teams, but they have a very good strength of record. They've got an extremely high, good strength of schedule. They've got quality wins. It doesn't surprise me that Bama makes it. You could make the argument based on how they're playing and how they played against Georgia. Maybe they should have been out, but in terms of the way they're doing this with the conference championships, it doesn't surprise me they're number 9. They're going to be going on the road at Oklahoma. They've lost to Oklahoma 2 times already in the previous 2 years. Last year, they lost at Oklahoma when Oklahoma was a lot worse. Oklahoma, I think, is a seriously flawed team. They're in this because they beat Alabama on the road in a game in which they should have lost. They were outgained by like 200 yards. And to me, that game is 2 teams that are struggling. Well, I guess maybe Oklahoma's not struggling right now, but they struggle on offense, that's for sure. I think if you're Indiana, you're in a good spot. If you face Alabama, there is going to be a talent discrepancy. Alabama is going to be the more talented roster. Ohio State was definitely more talented than Indiana. It didn't hurt Indiana, so we'll see. But if you are Indiana, you would prefer to face Oklahoma in that second round game. You've got the number 2 seed. It is Ohio State. This surprised me a little bit. I thought they would go with Georgia. And honestly, I was kind of hoping that Georgia, or I definitely was hoping that Georgia was going to be the 2 seed because I knew Ole Miss versus Tulane was the 6v11 matchup. The ideal spot to be in for something like this, you want to face Ole Miss in the second round without their head coach, 100%. And Ohio State they don't move down to 3. They move down to just 2. So they move from 1 to 2 for losing by 3 points in a game that just a weird, Ohio State was definitely uncomfortable throughout that entire game against Indiana. Now, they definitely had moments in the red zone where they're going to have to recalibrate some things. Maybe there's things they can do to try and fix that, but they made some mistakes, and they're facing either A&M or Miami. And so, you would listen, the 3 seed is the better spot to be. It's not even close. Like, this is one of the things with these playoffs and how the auto bids work. Like, we all know that Oklahoma probably is going to beat, Ole Miss is probably going to beat Tulane, but you would much rather face Ole Miss with the interim coach than A&M or Miami. So that's like the thing with, it's like So Ohio State's the 2 seed, but they're in a worse situation than Georgia is. So, but I think Ohio State, they're going to be favorites for sure over Texas A&M or Miami. Texas A&M versus Miami is an interesting matchup. It's an A&M home game, so they're probably going to be like 3 or 4 point favorites, but Miami is the better analytical team than Texas A&M. So that's probably going to be a very good game, 7v10. Tulane versus Ole Miss. I mean, that's a good route for Georgia. You're very likely going to face Ole Miss with an interim, or you're going to face Tulane, who's a group of 5 team, if Tulane somehow upsets Ole Miss. Looking at Texas Tech, so Texas Tech, the number 4 seed, they have the final auto bye. Or I just buy in general. They're going to face Oregon, and I think Oregon is a good team. That's going to be a tough matchup in the second round for Texas Tech. Oregon is sitting massive favorites against James Madison. James Madison makes it because Duke wins the ACC championship. Otherwise, you would have Tulane in the 12th spot, and Virginia would be the 11th spot. So Oregon is in a spot to where I think this is a very favorable situation for them, facing James Madison and then a neutral site game against Tech. And then after that, you're probably looking at Indiana in a rematch. Do you think Indiana, this is a tough situation for Indiana. You're possibly looking at Indiana having to beat Oregon and Ohio State twice to win the national title. But that would have to be an Ohio State versus Indiana rematch in the national title. But I think this is a very favorable draw for Oregon in terms of their route. But for Georgia, it's a great draw. Now, you do get probably Ohio State. You're going to be underdogs in that game. You'd want to be on the opposite bracket of the opposite side of Ohio State. But I mean, at this point, Indiana beat Ohio State. And by the way, imagine we seriously get a national championship game, Ohio State versus Indiana, and everybody's just going to be like, there's no way Indiana can beat Ohio State twice in 1 year. That's all anyone says when these rematches happen. And that's what I was saying about Alabama, Georgia, and we were right there. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, and then Notre Dame, you take a look at this. Notre Dame, the number 3 team, according to the analytics. This is not perfect. Yes, Notre Dame did have very subpar opponents later in the year. It allowed them to win games, stretch margins, really pump up their FPI number, but still, Notre Dame sitting at number 3, basically tied with Oregon in terms of FPI. Ohio State and Indiana a little bit ahead of all the teams, even ahead of Texas Tech. Notre Dame, look at this. They made the playoff. They missed the playoff. They made the playoff. Made. And then the next one that missed is Utah, which obviously at 10-2, they're not going to be in. But it's just interesting to see out of the top 9 teams, 8 of them make it, and the only one that didn't make it was ranked 3rd. So there is that. You look at strength of record. Strength of record is a very important metric, and it has Notre Dame at 13. Well, it has Notre Dame at 13, Miami at 14. It had BYU at 9. So maybe strength of record is not the end-all be-all anymore, because BYU sitting at 9, they were nowhere close. I think they finished like 14th overall in the rankings. So that is basically it, guys. Like I said, I think there's takeaways. I think people are angry. 2 group of 5 teams in the playoff because of the cork within the ACC, the crazy tiebreaker scenario. I mean, ideally what would happen is they would allow Miami, who had 2 losses in conference, and they were tied with a bunch of the other teams. Because Miami's like the highest ranked team, they would allow them to play in the ACC championship. That would be the tiebreaker. It's like highest ranked team. If it's like a 4-way tie, and then Miami could be in with an auto bid as a conference champ, and then you'd open up one more spot. Instead of James Madison taking it, it would be an at-large spot. Because Miami, their spot is at large. It's not, the auto conference championship, because it's the top 5 conference champions. So they had to put a conference champion at number 12. And it was like, is it Duke or is it James Madison? So that's what it came down to. And we will have to see. But I do think, to me, Alabama, Oklahoma, is it going to be a good game? It's probably going to be ugly, I'll say that. I think it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. This is the game that has the potential. It's 7v10. Miami at A&M. Potentially will be a very good game. It's a tough draw facing Ohio State in the second round. This game is probably going to be a blowout. Ole Miss versus Tulane. You have the thing with Lane Kiffin being gone, so maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a storyline for a Tulane upset. I don't buy it. And then Oregon versus James Madison, probably the most irrelevant game in round 1. Really not going to be talked about much. I think James Madison's been good this year. Yeah, James Madison's been good. I mean, I could calculate the spread right now. Oregon at 25 in terms of FPI rank. Where is James Madison? Tulane's at 4. James Madison. I think James Madison might be a little bit higher, actually. Let me do this. James Madison's at 10, 25-10. Wow, so I think they're only going to be like 18-point favorites then, Oregon over James Madison. So maybe not 23 or 24-point favorites if that's what, you know, it's not perfect, but it's kind of just a range on where the spread will be. So they'll be like minus 18 against James Madison. But either way, you got to feel bad for Notre Dame. I mean, it's not perfect in terms of, and that's why they made a huge deal about it on the election on the show where they selected the teams. They said, well, this year it's the toughest it's ever been. It's because the teams, one of the teams is great at FPI, the other team is great at strength of schedule, the other team has the head. They're just all staggered in terms of there's no great solution. The solution for Bama being 9 is basically they're not going to punish you for playing in a conference championship game. That's it. That's the solution on why they put Bama at 9. And for Miami at 10, they said, well, now Notre Dame and Miami are comparable, so we're going to move Miami in front of Notre Dame because of the head-to-head. And also, it's not like Miami. Like, if Miami was like 15th or 16th in FPI, I don't think there's no way they would move Miami in front of Notre Dame. Miami is 7th in FPI, so they're technically a top 12 team, just like Notre Dame is in terms of FPI. So their analytics are good and by far the best in the ACC. But we'll have to see how this ends up shaking out in terms of if these games are good or not. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Please like the video down below. Thank you for watching.